bigger than the boogeyman. He's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV. Oh, God is bigger than the boogeyman, and he's watching out for you and me. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, that's because it probably is. It's a good VeggieTales song from way back into our childhood days. But today, it almost seems as though we've forgotten that message, that God is truly bigger than the boogeyman. And so I'd like to look at the Bible today, because whenever we have questions or doubts or fears, we should go straight to the scriptures. And I want to see what the Bible has to say about fear. So that's why today we're going to start by looking at Luke chapter 12, verse 4 through 9, where it talks about fear and what to fear specifically. And starting with verse 4, Jesus tells us to fear God. And that's what I want us to come away with today. Verse 4, I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, and after that can do no more. But I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who after the killing of the body has the power to throw you into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. I tell you, whoever acknowledges me before men, the Son of Man will also acknowledge him before the angels of God. But he who disowns me before men will be disowned before the angels of God. So first things first, Jesus starts off by saying, be afraid, don't be afraid of those who can only kill the body. And he's not saying it in so many words, but essentially he's making the point that if we believe that heaven is so good, and if we truly believe in God, then why would we fear death, which brings us heaven instead, which brings us something better? So he's saying that's not what you should be afraid of. It's not death. It's the fact that after death, God can either say, well done, or I never knew you. That's what should terrify us. And so it's almost as if he senses the fear in the audience, and he backs up by saying, now hold on, don't be afraid. It almost sounds like he's contradicting himself a bit, where in verse 5 he says, who to fear, and in verse 7 he says, don't be afraid. But it's less of a contradiction and more of a clarification. You see, the fear that Jesus talks about isn't necessarily the fear that we know today. It's partial fear and part reverence. When you get a moment, try inserting respect instead of the word fear in some of these verses, and you'll see that they almost still sound the same. But Jesus is saying, if God even cares for the sparrows that we find worthless, wouldn't he care for you too? Wouldn't he care so much more for you, whom he created in his own image? So he's saying you don't have to worry about it. The ball's in your court now. He says if you acknowledge God, he'll acknowledge you and you'll be fine. If you don't acknowledge God, then you'll suffer the consequences. And that's the point he's making in verses 8 and 9. It's up to us. Luckily, there's hope. Luckily, there's a way. And that's why I'd like to turn quickly to Joshua chapter 1, verses 6 through 9, where God is reaffirming to Joshua that as long as we trust in him, everything's going to be okay. And there's nothing else to fear. And that's what's so glorious about the Bible, is that it says to fear God. And as long as we have that healthy respect for him, we have nothing else to worry about. Joshua 1, chapter 1, verse 6. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be successful to do everything in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And I love that because he says that to Joshua, especially to Joshua, who had just become, so to speak, president of an entire nation. He says to Joshua, as long as you follow me, you'll be okay. As long as you follow me, obey my law, don't let the book of the law depart from your mouth, you will be prosperous and successful. And that's a wonderful thing, that we can look to God, and as long as we respect him, there is nothing else to fear. So as we go into the Halloween time of year, we're going into the end of October, what I want us to take away from this is that so long as we follow God and understand that he is bigger than the boogeyman, that he's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV or whatever the monsters look like in our lives now, that if we can go back to our childlike faith that we had as kids, everything's going to be all right, so long as we trust in him.